Hi everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this evening for our Early Career Framework induction, mainly aimed at Induction Tutors. I know we've got a few different people with us this evening, including head teachers or teaching and learning coordinators, but we're hoping to give you an overview of the Induction Tutor role at the whole school level. My name is Marie Imrie, and I'm the Red Hill ECF lead for the Red Hill Teaching Hub, and I'm going to talk to you lots tonight about the ECF rollout. Caroline Challoner is also with us tonight. She is our appropriate body lead, and she's going to talk for about 10 minutes at the end specifically about the appropriate body, how you can sign up for it, and the role that it will have next year. If you've got any questions throughout the presentation, please pop them in the chat, and Sally and Caroline will look at those as they're coming through. Sally Barfoot is our director of the Teaching Hub, and she is also with us this evening. Before we get going, I just want to say a massive thank you for choosing to partner with the Red Hill Teaching Hub as your delivery partner for the ECF. We are really pleased that you have done that, and we are excited about kind of this new ECF framework and having the opportunity to work with you, the ECTs in your school, and also the mentors in your school too. There are 5 key things that we're going to look at tonight, and I'm sorry there is a lot of information that is coming your way. As I said, I'm going to focus on kind of sections 1 to 4, which is mainly for, about the early career framework, and then Caroline will then talk to you a little bit about the appropriate body. Right, I'm sure that many of you have a good understanding of the early career framework and already understand the purpose of the ECF programme. I would just like to take a couple of minutes to talk to you about some fundamental differences that there are between the early career framework and then also the kind of the current NQT programme that is running. Sally did a webinar quite recently, a few weeks ago, which is on our website at the moment, and she covered the kind of rationale and the reasons behind those changes. So if you'd like a little bit more information on that, then that, as I said, that webinar is on our website. Okay, so first of all, one thing that I have just about got my head around, but I am still referring to ECTs and NQTs sometimes, is that from September, your new starters will be ECTs or early career teachers and not referred to as NQTs. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to this. So, for example, at my school at the moment, we have 2 NQTs who are part-time, and therefore they haven't concluded their induction period. So they will continue to be NQTs next year, and they will follow the same assessment schedule as they have been doing this year. You may also have an NQT this year who maybe has had an extension to their induction period, probably linked to the school closures and kind of COVID-related issues. So if that is the case, they will also be an NQT, and as I've just said, they will carry on that NQT assessment rather than the early career framework option that is available. Another key change is the way that the assessments work, and this will be run by the appropriate body, and Caroline is going to talk about this in a little bit more detail later on. But instead of being termly assessments, there are now 2 formal assessments which are at the end of each year. Now, they are structured in a very similar way to the termly assessments at the moment, in that there needs to be evidence and then a target or development point linked to each of the teaching standards. So that will be one at the end of year 1, and then obviously a second one at the end of year 2. There are also termly reviews that need to be completed, but these are very quick and are just 2 simple tick boxes. Okay, so that's the second change. The third key change, I think, is the kind of the extra time that the ECTs are going to have in year 2 to fully complete their induction period. So currently, NQTs have a 10% reduction in their timetable, and that will still be the case. ECTs will still get that, but they will also now have a 5% reduction in their timetable going on into year 2. Now, there's no extra funding for the year 1 time because that is already part of the national funding formula anyway. However, schools will receive money in the summer of year 2, so not until the end of year 2, to release the ECTs for their 5%, but also to release the mentors for the necessary training that they will have during that time. Okay. Fourthly, all training now that the ECTs carry out must be linked to the early career framework. And this is a set programme from the EDT, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. Now, I've been an NQT mentor many times before, and I know that it's really easy for those mentor meetings to become an hour of just sorting out issues. That can't really happen now because the meetings must match the content of the early career framework, and the EDT have produced really high quality resources to enable those mentor meetings to do that. And fifthly, and finally, the other key change that I think is really important is now all the training will now be provided through the Red Hill Hub. So the ECT will be able to access all of the kind of excellent resources that we have by coming to the training sessions led to us. I would also say, I don't think there is any need for the ECTs to complete any extra CPD. Actually, I would probably recommend that they don't do. There is plenty in the early career framework to train them to be quality teachers by the end of that second year. Okay, now, I also just wanted to talk about the teacher standards a little bit. So the ECF is divided into 5 kind of clear sections. And again, Sally talked a little bit about that in the webinar that she did a few weeks ago. But actually in the document, they are linked to the teacher's standards. And it's set out in a style that's very, very similar to the ITT framework, if you've also worked with that during this year. Now, the ECT's training should directly match these statements, and because you've signed up to the Hub and because they're going to receive all of their training through the Hub, they will do. And as I've already mentioned, the weekly mentor meetings will also match that content. But however, the ECF is not an assessment tool, it is a training tool. And it is the role of the induction tutor to assess the ECTs against the teacher standards. So as a really rough kind of guide, the mentor works with the early career teacher on the ECF, on the early career framework, and then the induction tutor would refer to the teacher's standards and then assess the ECT against their progress to those standards. Okay, so that was section 1, which is just a little kind of introduction to the early career framework and some of the kind of key differences that I think there are between that and the NQT program that's currently running. The second thing I just want to talk to you about is the Education Development Trust, who are the national provider that we have signed up to. So the DFE appointed 6 national providers to deliver the early career framework, and teaching hubs were asked to make a choice of provider. So as a hub, we picked the Education Development Trust because we were the provider that felt they were most aligned with our current approach to training. They've got a really good balance of face-to-face facilitation and also online learning. And also they have a strong regard for teacher workload. So they know how busy it is being a teacher day to day and kind of the roles and responsibilities that people also have. They also have strong links to the Sheffield Hallam University Institute of Education, and they were heavily involved in the design of the ECF. So that made them it made their offer even more appealing. The EDT, the Education Development Trust, have designed all of the resources that the mentors will use and all of the training sessions that the mentors and the ECTs will carry out. So the training sessions have been designed by the Educational Development Trust, but they will be led by expert facilitators, all of who will work through the Red Hill Hub. Okay, so this is how the EDT have set out their early career professional development programme. And as you can see, it comprises 6 blocks per year, and the ECTs and the mentors work through 1 block per half term. They refer to them as blocks because for each one, the ECT will learn the theory, put it into practice in the classroom, and then reflect on it during an instructional coaching session with their mentor. So this gives it kind of this 3D structure, and that's where the block comes from. You will also see that the key elements of the ECF are introduced in year 1, and then they're developed and mastered in year 2 to give some spiralling to the curriculum. So the ECTs have a chance to get the basics sorted and then really master those skills they're moving into year 2. All of these materials will be available through an online portal, which the mentors and the ECT will be able to access on the 6th of September. Now, I know in particular the mentors will probably like to access that a bit sooner and get a bit ahead of the game and look at some of the stuff. But the DFE have to sign off and accredit all of the resources, and the EDT are currently waiting for that process to happen. I also know that some schools will probably already have been in a school for a week by the 6th of September. I think we go back on the 31st of August. But however, I don't think that's too much of an issue. If that first week, the mentor meeting is simply kind of getting to grips with things, getting to know people, getting to know the school a little bit, that would be absolutely fine for that first week. Okay, so this is the training schedule for the early career framework with all the kind of training sessions and things that they will have to independently do as well. Now, I am just going to talk through this diagram because I know that the first time I saw it, it took a couple of minutes to just get my head around what exactly was happening. I'm also just going to focus on year 1 for now because I think that that's probably enough. Okay, so term 1 is obviously autumn term. So in that autumn term, the ECTs will have a local group session, and this will be a face-to-face training session that will be led by the facilitators at the Red Hill Hub. We're hoping to have approximately 30 ECTs in those sessions, because we feel that gives a good balance of numbers, but also kind of that group is small enough, there's still to be elements of discussion for the ECTs to network with each other, share good practice, and kind of discuss the elements of the ECF that they're working on. So autumn term, there is a local group session, as I said, that will be face-to-face training for half a day. There are also 2 webinars that the ECT, the early career teacher, needs to complete. These are both 1 hour long, and these will be accessed through the EDT portal, which they will have their own login for. Now, these are pre-recorded, so that does give a little bit more flexibility as to when they would be able to access them in their free time after school, or whenever they feel would be best for them. So that is autumn term. There are also some self-study materials. Again, they will be accessed through the portal, and again, the ECT can do those kind of when they feel would be best with their time. Term 2 is obviously spring term. So there is still a webinar on the portal, still self-study on the portal, but this time the training that they receive from the hub is regional training, and that is a whole day, and that's online. So we're hoping to have approximately 70 ECTs on there, so it will be a slightly bigger scale, but again, it will be run by the expert facilitators of the Red Hill Hub. Term 3, so summer term, they'll have another local group session and another webinar to complete. Now, as I said, I'm not really going to talk about year 2 at this stage, because let's just focus on 1 year at a time. However, just to point out, there is one quite key difference, that the weekly mentor meetings that happen in year 1 then become fortnightly sessions then moving into year 2. Okay. Now, these are the provisional dates that we have for the ECT training. So this gives you a good idea of kind of when the ECTs will be out. Ideally, they will attend the same session for each training event, because we'd really like them to become a cohort and develop relationships within that group, and also with the lead facilitator. So for example, if they go to the Derbyshire one for the first local training, we'd really like it for them to go to the Derbyshire one for the other regional, for the other face-to-face training as well. However, there is a little bit of flexibility built into that. So for example, if you've got a part-time early career teacher and they don't work on a Tuesday, they would be able to attend a different session the second time. We're also aware that there are some schools who have got quite a few ECTs in there, and clearly you wouldn't want all of those staff to be out on the same day. So again, you could spread them out across the sessions and maybe have a couple out each day to help with your cover load during that week. Also, if you have an early career teacher who lives in a different area but teaches with you, they are more than welcome to attend the session that is closest to home rather than the one that your school is part of. But again, we just ask that then they stayed with that group moving forward. If you have got different ECTs at different sessions, that won't be a problem at all, because that training session will be identical each time, and the hub will be carrying out QA across those sessions to ensure that that's the case. And as I've already said, those resources are produced by the EDT, the Education Development Trust, but they will be delivered by us, and they will directly match the block that the ECT is working on during that particular half term. Okay, so this is the training schedule for the mentors, and as you can see, there are some similarities and some differences between the mentor training and the ECT training. In term 1, in autumn term, the mentors also have a local group session. We're hoping that will also be about 30 participants in that, half a day. And then in term 2, in spring term, again, a regional training session that will be a whole day online again. However, the mentors don't have a training session in term 3, and there's 2 possible reasons for that. I think firstly, it is recognised that summer term is manic in schools. Obviously at secondary, we're preparing students for GCSE and A-level exams, and in primaries you've got SAT, and then I know there's lots of kind of events that happen in primary schools as well during that time. So that term has been kept free for the mentors. The mentors also have webinars that they will need to access and participate in. Again, they will be pre-recorded, so there's a little bit of flexibility as to when they can complete them, and they will be via the EDT portal, as will the reading and reflection. The extra thing that the mentors get to do, which the ECTs aren't part of, is the peer-to-peer coaching. Oh, I'm really sorry, I've moved on by mistake there. Let me just go back now again. Is the peer-to-peer coaching. So we will pair them up with a buddy mentor, hopefully from a different school, and they will meet with them regularly through that 2-year period that they are mentoring their early career teacher. So we are really hoping that this will be an opportunity for them to develop their coaching skills, discuss their professional development, the progress of them as a coach and also of their ECT, but also other issues and ideas with another member of staff who is in a similar situation. So in September, we will start to look at that and kind of look at budgeting people up. So just moving on to the training dates for the mentors, as I've already said, there isn't one in the summer term, so there's only 2 training sessions that they need to attend. As with the ECTs, these are provisional dates. We just need to do some kind of last checking on those. These are provisional dates, and we'll send the kind of the agreed ones out in September. But we would like, again, the mentors to try and stick with a group if they can. Okay. Now, we will send out invitations to the ECTs and the mentors to join a cohort of their choice early in September. Now, the numbers on each one are going to be limited, so it is likely to be on a first come, first served basis. And therefore, we really appreciate a quick response, as we will have a limited turnaround time. As you can see, that first training session is on the 27th of September, which only gives us a couple of weeks after the start of term. And also some schools are still registering, so we're not fully sure of final numbers. What I'll also do is tomorrow I'm running a similar session for the mentors, and I will ask the mentors to just run past you the dates that they're signing up for before they book onto one of these events. Because I think you need to have an overview of when staff are going to be out, particularly, as I've said, if you've got a lot of ECTs, you don't want everyone out on the same day. Okay, so what I'd just like to take a few minutes now to talk about is the role of the induction tutor and what exactly are your roles and responsibility as the induction tutor. So first of all, who should be the induction tutor? Now, in a secondary setting, there is probably a member of staff already who's doing a very similar role, probably referred to the NQT coordinator. However, after some feedback from primary schools, there possibly isn't someone in the primary schools who is kind of carrying out this role. So first of all, again, we've had some questions mainly from smaller primary schools about separation of roles. Now, ideally, the induction tutor wouldn't be the head teacher. Now, we understand that in a small primary that may be necessary. However, there will be pinch points linked to work, particularly at the end of the year when the assessments are due. And the head teacher may feel they haven't got the workload capacity to take that role on. I think also we need to recognise that if the ECT is struggling to make expected progress, it is the induction tutor's role to complete and kind of monitor and track an action plan. So that could greatly increase the workload of that head teacher at that time. Again, I know this may be difficult in a small primary school, but ideally the mentor and the induction tutor should be separate people. They are very different roles, and there needs to be clarity in the role of kind of the support and guidance from the mentor, and then the assessment against the standards of the induction tutor. And I think if it was the same person, there could be a situation where the early career teacher is maybe questioning whether to ask for guidance, because it would also be that person who would then be assessing them. So as I've said, we understand that in a small school this will be difficult, but ideally if they could be separate roles, that would be an ideal situation. So what exactly is the role of the induction tutor? Well, I mean, as I've mentioned, some of this kind of overlaps with the role of an NQT coordinator that you might already have in your school, and quite possibly this is the role that you are already carrying out. As I've already mentioned, one of the main roles is writing and then coordinating the assessments and tracking the progress of the early career teacher against the teacher's standards. So that would be one of the key roles. Also, carrying out observations of the early career teacher and giving constructive feedback that is linked to the teacher's standards. Now, there's no official guidelines about the number of observations that an early career teacher should have. In my school, I'm still going to recommend once a half term, which is what we do at the moment with our NQTs. And ideally, that would be the induction tutor that carries those out. However, it could also be a different experienced members of staff. I think particularly if your school has got a large number of early career teachers, it would be difficult for the induction tutor to carry out all of those observations each half term. And I also think sometimes it's beneficial for early career teachers to just get some feedback from a different teacher as well, a different experienced member of staff who might just have a slightly different focus area. Okay. Obviously then, these observations that are carried out can form part of the evidence for the termly reviews and for the yearly assessments, which is what happens now with the NQTs. along with kind of feedback from the mentor about the early career teachers and their work that they are completing on the early career framework. Okay. Another role is to construct an action plan if it's necessary. So if you have an early career teacher who's maybe struggling to meet the standards, it would be the induction tutor's role to put together an action plan and to monitor their progress against that action plan. I think, as with anything, those targets need to be really clear and achievable and kind of linked to a specific teacher standard. And also that the early career teachers should be getting constant feedback about how they're getting on, so that if they are put on an action plan, it's not a surprise to them. They kind of know that they've got areas to work on. Now, Caroline is obviously, as I've already said, our appropriate body lead, and we are going to work together in order to formulate like an action plan pro forma that you would be able to use as a basis in your school. And then 2 other ones. Confirmation of the mentoring sessions will be via the EDT portal. You will also get an individual link to that. That will be a very quick tick box each half term just to say the mentoring sessions have occurred. And then also the induction tutor will be the main contact person with the appropriate body. And as I've said a couple of times, Caroline is going to talk about that in a minute. Now, I've talked a little bit there about the role of the induction tutor, but also obviously we need to have a good idea of the role of the mentor as well, because it's really important there is clarity of roles. The mentor is guiding, supporting, challenging thinking. The induction tutor is assessment against the teacher standards. So as I've said earlier on, right at the start, as a rough rule of thumb, the mentor is working with the early career framework and the induction tutor is working with the teacher standards. I think it's also worth bearing in mind that some schools are opting to have specialist mentors who will carry out this role every year, regardless of the subject specialism or key stage specialism of that future early career teacher. Now, this obviously would enable these staff to become experts in the process of instructional coaching. And then obviously they would be able to use these skills with other staff in the school as well. So one of the main points about the early career framework is to also give the mentors a really good CPD opportunity and for them to be developing their skills in coaching and mentoring alongside the ECT developing their general teaching skills. So if you think you might go down this route of kind of having specialist mentors, I think it's also worth thinking about the new MPQ that is going to start in November on leading teacher development. So the DFE is fully funding this particular MPQ, and the Red Hill Hub is running it, as I said, starting in November. There's lots of information on the website about that, and you can book now for that November cohort. I think if you had a specialist coach, mentor in your school, they would then have the capacity to, yes, work with all of the ECTs, but also maybe work with other staff who are struggling on an area of their practice, or maybe also then train other staff in the methods of instructional coaching. So that could be a whole benefit to the school. Okay, so last little thing before I hand over to Caroline is what to do next. Now, I think quite possibly you will have already done quite a lot of this already. So first of all, I know I've said a few times that the induction tutor won't be directly referring to the ECF, but I think it's obviously useful to have a good understanding of the work that the early career teacher and the mentor are completing each week. There is also a really useful comprehensive reference list throughout the early career framework, which may be useful actually for other members of staff in your school too. And the key ones are highlighted in there, linked to each of the standards. If you are carrying out the NQT coordinator role at the moment, you will already have a really good understanding of the teacher standards. But if you haven't used them for a while, it would be worth just downloading a copy of those and maybe just refreshing your memory a little bit. Now, choosing your mentors. Now, I think probably, to be honest, you've already chosen your mentors already, and I'm hoping that they've also signed up for the session tomorrow evening, where I'm going to talk about the role of the mentor. However, the mentor role is extremely important. They are the key person that is going to be working with the early career teacher to develop their teaching skills through a 2-year period. So I think the choosing of the mentors is really important. So for example, who has the capacity to build a really positive relationship with that ECT? Who has the workload capacity to take on that role? And is it possible to give them some time? Now, I know for next year, timetables are already complete, but I think moving forwards, this could be a consideration. The mentor training has been designed to provide high quality CPD for the mentors, as well as the early career teacher. And as I've already mentioned, it's really hoped they will be able to take those coaching skills back into your school and work with other members of staff too. So again, have you got a member of staff in mind who you think would be really good at that role? And then last two jobs, are to complete the registration process, which I'll go through in a second, and also then to sign up with the appropriate body. Now, we're really hoping everybody has done this already, and I think you must have done to be part of this meeting tonight. If there are any things on here that you haven't done, please can you do them ASAP? And if you need any support with that, Risha is our hub manager, and her email address is going to come up at the end. And there's also lots of information on the website as well. So I think you will have already registered with the hub, otherwise you wouldn't have received this invitation to this session tonight. If you've got early career teachers starting in September, you must register them with the DFE. Now, I was really struggling to do that in my school because the DFE kept saying that they sent an email to the office and the office couldn't find the email. And then eventually I found this individual email address here, this continuing professional development one. And I emailed them directly, and everybody there has been really helpful. Every question I've had, I've got a really quick response, and everything has now been sorted out. So if you are having any issues with DFE at all, email the people at this address here, and fingers crossed they will be able to sort it. If you haven't done already, can you register your early career teachers with the EDT? And then again, it would be really helpful for us kind of thinking about the planning for next year if we had an idea of numbers as well. So if you click on that link, that will take you to our hub registration. Okay, right. I am now going to hand over to Caroline, and she is just going to talk you through the role of the appropriate body.
Hi everyone, so my name is Caroline Challoner, and I'm here to give you an overview of our appropriate body service, which we're going to be offering to all our partner schools from September. So we're going to be working with the Nottinghamshire County Council and also with the Flying High Teaching Hub to ensure that all of our schools have access to an affordable and hopefully user-friendly appropriate body service. So what do we do first of all? So the first thing we do is we monitor the support that our ECT is receiving. So we basically ensure that our ECTs are receiving their entitlements and receiving an early career framework based induction. And also we will provide fidelity checks on the new early career framework delivery to ensure that schools are fully supported throughout the whole induction process. The second thing we do is we monitor the assessment of the ECT. So we check on their progress reports and their assessments to verify the head teacher's decision on whether the ECT has met all of the teacher standards. So from September, there's going to be 3 organisations providing the appropriate body service across the county. So it's going to be the Redhill Teaching Hub, the Flying High Teaching Hub, and Nottinghamshire County Council will also continue to apply that service as well. So how to register? So in our first year as a hub, we're going to be offering our appropriate body service to all schools linked to the Redhill Academy Trust, to the Minster Trust for Education, and to Diverse Academies Trust. And as we develop our service, we're going to extend that service to all of the schools in our region. So to register, and I know some of you will have done this already, so apologies for that, you just need to register as an induction tutor using the link on this slide, which will be emailed out to you. And if you already have an account for this, that's absolutely fine, but you will need to re-register for September, as your existing account is with Notts County Council. And you'll need a new account for the new ECT manager. Once your account's been authorised, you can add all of your ECT's details and register them. Okay, so what else do you need to know? So registration is now open, so please do get registered as soon as possible, and the fees have been agreed across the 3 appropriate bodies, so they're all consistent, and they're going to be £275 per ECT for the 2 years and £150 per ECT for 1 year. And the 1 year package might be particularly useful if you have any ECTs that have been appointed on a 1 year contract. Before you register them, there is a useful pre-induction checklist, which has been provided by the DFE, and that is linked on the slide as well. It's really important just to check that list, which is given on page 10 of that document, just to ensure that the ECT will be receiving all of their entitlements that they need. ECT Manager is going to use the DFE templates for recording, which some of them you'll be used to already. It's the same system as NQT Manager is currently, just with a new name. And if you're used to that system, that's fine. If you're not, if you're new to it, there's some really useful guides on there that explain in detail how to use the website. But also, please do get in touch with us if you have any problems with it, and we can guide you through. So there'll be progress reviews in terms 1, 2, 4 and 5, and then assessments in terms 3 and 6. And the forms must be signed by the ECT and the induction tutor at each stage. So firstly, the progress reviews, they're really straightforward. They're just literally 2 questions to complete about the ECT. Are they on track, and are they remaining at your school for the next term? If the ECT isn't on track, then we'll contact you to provide us with a bit more information so we can plan how to move forward and support. These reviews take place in the first 2 terms in Year 1, so terms 1 and 2, and the first 2 terms of Year 2, so 4 and 5. The assessments then, which happen at the end of each year, are really similar to the current assessment forms that you'll be used to. So there's text boxes to complete on how the ECT has met each of the teacher standards. There's also some further questions about attendance and contracts, part-time or full-time, and support, and they must be completed all by the induction tutor. There's also a few questions for the ECT to answer about the programme that they've been receiving, and all those assessments again need to be signed by the tutor, the ECT, but also these ones need to be signed by the head teacher as well. And then following the final assessment in term 6, the appropriate body just verifies that the ECT has met all the teacher standards and that no extension is required. And if it is required, then that could be something that is discussed. Okay, so how can we help? Well, to help and support our ECTs, mentors and induction tutors, we're going to be issuing a handbook, which will be available to download in September. We're also going to be doing some introductory sessions, which will probably be webinars to ECTs to explain their roles and responsibilities during induction so they're clear on the process. And also we will be producing some materials and giving advice to induction tutors, things like Marie discussed this earlier about action plan templates for ECTs who may need additional support. So we're going to be developing those over the next couple of weeks to help you with that. And that's it. Thank you for listening. If you have any inquiries about anything that we've talked about today or anything that you think of, then please do email us at the Hub, and also have a look at our website as well. And if you have any questions that you'd like to ask now, then please feel free to pop them in the chat, and Marie and myself will answer them for you if we can. Thank you.
As I said at the start, thank you very much for coming. I know it's manic at the moment. I've seen a few questions in the chat, but I think that Sally has pretty much responded to all of them as Caroline and I have been speaking. If anyone has got any other questions that they'd like to ask, I can see the chat box now, so we can try and answer them. So yeah, so do that. So if you've got questions, please ask them. If you'd like any more information, then do that. As Caroline said, you can contact us on the website or at the Hub, and we will try and answer them. If you have your questions, thank you very much for attending, and you are free to leave. Thank you. Okay, so Sally, quite a few more come through now. Hang on. Right. So I've got a question from John. So do we register new members of staff to the school who have completed a term or more of NQT in a different school? Right, so the early career framework is only for ECTs who are starting in September. So if you have, sorry, more questions are coming up here as I'm trying to answer that one. If you have NQT who has already started their NQT induction, they will carry on with the NQT routes. So they will still need to be with an appropriate body, but they will not have access to the early career framework, and their assessment will be the same as it currently is now, with the termly assessments for the 1 year they would need to complete. So John, I hope I've answered your question there. If not, just let me know and I'll try and add a little bit more detail. So Emma says, so do I need to register the ECTs with both the appropriate body and the DFE now? So you definitely need to register them with the DFE. And as I said, if you are struggling with that, that email address was a godsend when I found it, and they respond really, really quickly. As opposed to registering the individual ECTs with the appropriate body, do we need to do that as well? Yes, you do need to do that. And as Caroline said, if you're using the Red Hill Hub appropriate body, you'll need to set up a new account with a new password. Right, a question from H. Cooper. I'm really sorry, I don't know your first name. Oh, Sally's already answered that. That's great. So when will this and the other recording be available? So these tomorrow. So these recordings are going to go onto the website, and Sally has just said they will be available tomorrow. The session I'm running tomorrow for the mentors has got a lot of information that is the same. So, you know, if anybody wanted to come to that, they'd obviously be more than welcome. But the vast majority of information is the same, just with a mentor twist to it rather than the induction tutor twist. That will also then go onto the website as well, and presumably that will be on Thursday because that is tomorrow. Right, a message from Claire. So
next year, can you register the next year?
Yes. So Claire says we have an ECT starting in January 2022. Do I register her now? No, Claire, so just hold fire for a little bit. If we could just focus on the people who are registering for September, that would be great. We are looking at, obviously working with the EDT, running a January cohort for any ECTs that kind of start from November onwards. So then they would then become part of that cohort. Now, obviously, we are expecting numbers for that to be much lower than the September one, so we wouldn't necessarily be repeating the training sessions. That there would probably be one day for each of those sessions, but they would become part of that January cohort, and we will ask for those registrations later on next term. Okay, right, a message from Katie. Have you already replied to Katie, Sally?
No.
Okay, so should the assessment in term 3 and 6 be completed by the induction tutor? Can it be written by? So Katie, ideally, the induction tutor now would write the assessments. That would just be the yearly ones, because obviously it's not the same as the termly ones that there are now. So it would just be end of year 1 and end of year 2. Now, as I said, ideally that would be the induction tutor. If you're in a very large school, you might not know the ECTs that well. If you have a lot of ECTs, that would be a lot of work at the same point. So we are obviously aware of the fact that the mentors and the ECTs will also have a role to play in writing those assessments. But ideally, we do need to try and keep this kind of clarity of role between the mentor being the guidance and support, and the coach, and the induction tutor being the assessor. Right, so Sally, you are replying to Hannah. Right. So a question from SO23. What about an NQT passing this summer? Do they go on to the second year of ECT? No, they don't. So if you've got an NQT this year who has passed their induction, they have now passed, and they just do exactly what NQTs would have gone on and done in the past and go up to M2 on the scale. And they would not have kind of official ECF training. Now, as a hub, we are looking at, as a trust, we are looking at providing training for the RQTs or NQTs +1 next year, linked to two reasons. I think firstly, they've had such a disrupted training year and such a disrupted NQT year as well. I think it would be really beneficial for them to have some extra training. Also, there is obviously this kind of 5%, the funding for an extra 5% release of timetable that the NQTs +1s are going to receive. Now, the government only released that a few weeks ago, and by that point, quite a lot of timetables were done. So I know as a trust, we are thinking about kind of releasing the NQTs +1 for a day, so they have a day of training. That is going to be run at our trust level, but we think that other trusts will be doing something similar. Okay. A question from B Ward. Sorry, again, I don't know your surname. If an NQT, Bryony, all right. If an NQT still has a term to complete, do they need to be registered? No, they don't. So if you have a part-time NQT at the moment, which is the situation at my school, or if maybe the NQT started in January and they've just still got a term to go, they don't need to be registered because they will not be following the early career framework. they will still be an NQT, not an ECT, and they will still be assessed in the old style that we are used to completing assessment for NQTs. So they will still need to be registered with an appropriate body, but presumably they are already registered with an appropriate body, so that would just then carry on through to next term. Right, Sally has replied to one then. Oh, Sally, you'd already replied to that one. I didn't realise that. Right, so another creative question from Katie. Will the assessment reports be mainly based on observations by the induction tutor over the year? So yes, Katie, clearly that is going to be a main piece of evidence that would go into those assessment reports. I think also just general conversations with the mentors and the ECTs about their work during on the early career framework and kind of evidence that they might be able to collect linked to that. They don't have to evidence each statement of the early career framework. They don't need to have like a big folder of evidence or anything like that. So I think just conversations with them, and particularly the mentor, because the mentor will have a really good idea of how exactly they're getting on. Right, Emma. In terms of observations, currently I observe once per term and mentors observe the other. Ideally, I would now observe each half term. Are the mentors expected to do? Yes. So ideally, in an ideal situation, Emma, the induction tutor would now complete the more formal observations, and the mentors then would do informal observations, particularly linked to whatever the focus is of that block during the half term. However, as I said during the presentation, we are very aware of the fact that if you are an induction tutor at a large school, or if you've got large numbers of early career teachers, that might not be possible. There just physically won't be enough time in the half term for you to be able to do that. And I also think that it is sometimes useful for the ECTs or for anyone training, in their early years, to get feedback from different people as well. So I think if you could do as many as you can, and then ask other experienced members of staff to do the rest, and obviously all of that can then feed into those termly kind of tick reports, but also end of year reports. Right, will there be some training on instructional coaching for mentors? Is this something? Oh, sorry. Right.
Yeah, I've just put yes, there will, and EDT will provide some training as well. But if you want to get a feel on it, check out the videos on YouTube by Jim Knight on instructional coaching.
Okay, thank you very much. I am going to mention instructional coaching tomorrow, just to give the mentors a bit of a heads up that that is the main way that they're going to be working with the early career teachers. But clearly in half an hour, I can't go through all of the information that I have tonight, and also that as well. So I will mention it, but as Sally said, if they could kind of get a bit of a heads up on that and look at that, that would be great. And I also think the first mentor face-to-face session, we talk about instructional coaching quite a lot, and kind of the process of going through it. Okay, I can't see any more questions.
Thank you everybody for attending. It's really lovely to see so many of you here, and thank you to Marie and Caroline. If you've got any more questions, do just get in touch. We are here to help, and we're more than happy to take phone calls or emails. Just get in touch with us.